Hello, team. Welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video on myself, Jonathan M.S. Pitts. Ukraine War News Update. First part thereof for the 11th of August 2024. This will start with, as normal, the Ukrainian General Staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. You can find them in the description to the video below. We have 1,220 personnel lost, which is a pretty high number, and up. I think it's an uptick from yesterday. 6 tanks, not the greatest number. 13 armored personnel vehicles, likewise, but significant enough, I guess. It is under the average, though, admittedly. 58 artillery systems is well over the daily average, running at probably 3 and a bit times the daily average. Then we have 1 helicopter added there as well. We've heard rumors of a number of aircraft being taken down in the Kursk area. 71 vehicles and fuel tanks is incredibly high number in that category. Probably a number of trucks and reinforcements, supplies and personnel trucks being hit. 11 pieces of special equipment as well to add to that. Andrew Perpetua has a loss list that you can see here. He's had an awful lot of work cut out for him, with regard to everything that's going on, from mapping to equipment losses and geolocations. Here we have about, I guess, if you're going to not include all those ones at the end, the unknown and the decoys and the misses, it's probably a 2-to-1, certainly combat asset losses, 2-to-1, Russian to Ukrainian losses. Quite a lot of equipment lost on both sides. And remember, if the Ukrainians are attacking up into Kursk, which obviously they are, the latest claims that they are 40 kilometers deep into Kursk, then they are going to be losing equipment. It's just, if you're going to attack, you will lose stuff. But if you look at the combat equipment, not crazy list here. So you got couple of howitzers, an M1 Abrams tank destroyed, abandoned and hit by an FPV drone, a number of other tanks, T-72, T-64s. So 5 tanks lost is fairly heavy for the Ukrainians in a day. We've got a BMP-2 destroyed, a FV-103 Spartan destroyed. We've got a VAB that was recovered. I showed you that yesterday. Bushmaster damaged. That's a mine-resistant ambush protection vehicle from Australia, and then the Kozak damaged. And then the rest of civilian vehicles destroyed and damaged there. So, yeah, that's not too bad a day considering what they are doing. When you look at the Russian losses, we've got electronic warfare systems, Muron P, surveillance and comms equipment, all sorts of other surveillance and comms stuff, some engineering vehicles. So they're trying to hit those engineering vehicles, possibly up in the Kursk region, that are digging those trenches, and they're building. We know they're building around the nuclear power plant up in was it Kurchatov or up around Kursk. So yeah, this is something I think that we'll see more of. Then we have some artillery pieces, quite a few, including 2 BM-21 Grad multiple launch rocket systems, 1 destroyed, 1 damaged. We have a number of tanks here. Interestingly, we have a captured tank there, T-72B3, modified in 2022. We have a lot of other equipment, mainly destroyed. So if you look at the equipment here, the proportion that is either black or, well, in this case, teal, black or brown compared to grey, it is almost entirely destroyed or abandoned. And the same for the infantry fighting vehicles. So not a crazy amount of equipment, but some good proportions there. For the trucks, almost all of their trucks destroyed or abandoned. That's good news for the Ukrainians again. Some ATVs, some quads and golf buggies that the Russians evidently using, and a few civilian vehicles as well, loafs and buggies and cars and vans and whatnot. So a fairly challenging day for the Russians. No massively high value equipment for either side, though, it has to be said. Russians still losing more prisoners of war. There are some claims to this one from Max 24 that the Ukrainians have taken over 1,000 prisoners in Kursk from the Russians. That is absolutely phenomenal if true. We have seen an awful lot. I mean, I've visually seen what must be like 200 troops now. Just myself, and I've not been looking particularly hard. Here's another unit that has apparently surrendered. That's doing the rounds. That video footage, along with others. Now, apparently, a group of FSB officers might have been ambushed in Kursk. Maybe there was a major among them. Is the rumor here from PS01? We'll wait to see whether that is true. But another personnel loss for the Russians. Now, the Ukrainians are losing vehicles. Of course, they are. Russian channels are showing more videos of destruction of Ukrainian equipment, which it claims is destroyed in Kursk, but that's unconfirmed. And the reason why Tim White says something like that is initially skeptical is because the Russians have put out, as the Kursk attack started, they started putting out these helicopter footage of strikes on Ukrainian positions, claiming that this was in Kursk and this was them repelling the Ukrainian attacks. And clever OSINT people, clever open source intelligence people, have done geolocations on that and shown that those were indeed in Donetsk and not in Kursk, which is just par for the course, I guess, for the Russians. So Moscow says since yesterday, 230 troops, this is what Moscow says, 59 armored vehicles and APCs and 7 tanks and 3 launchers and the Patriot defense radar have been hit. And of course, that's ostensibly going to be untrue. Anyway, let's now move on to distance strikes and whatnot and see what we have in that category. With regards to distance munitions, sorry, I had to go down for breakfast. I'm back again. There was quite an attack last night. A huge number of drones, by the looks of it. 57 attack drones sent into Ukraine by the Russians. 53 of them shot down. So it's a pretty damned good interception rate, especially given the sheer volume of attack drones sent in. North Korean ballistic missiles were also fired. None of the 4 were intercepted. I think Kyiv suffered there. So, what's happening about the fact that Russia are using KN-23 North Korean ballistic missiles? I don't know. So as Tim White says in this piece or tweet, North Korea's missiles are terrorist weapons. They are not accurate and pose a deadly threat to civilians. Remember, we heard the other day that a huge proportion of them actually don't make it to the target. They explode in midair or are just very inaccurate. They pose a deadly threat to civilians, as he said, just what Russia loves, plausible deniability as they murder Ukraine's people. Kyiv region was targeted overnight. 2 people died. I think it was a 4-year-old boy and his dad under that rubble, dead, I believe. In Brovary, just east of Kyiv, here it is, 2 bodies were found in the rubble of the building. So a 35-year-old man and 4-year-old boy, presumably his son. 3 others, including a 13-year-old, were injured when the NK-23, I thought it was KN-23 actually, weapon hit the building. So, yeah, definitely an issue that they are using these missiles, and especially since they're ballistic, very difficult to shoot down, and bit of a challenge to the Ukrainians there. But really good news in terms of interception rates of the Shahed drones. So one of the other bad attacks last night came in the Kharkiv region. Thankfully, no one was injured there, but Russia hit a creative youth center in Zolochiv, as well as residential buildings. There was a civilian death in the Kupiansk district last night in another attack. So, so you can see the ramifications of those strikes last night on Kharkiv. And we move on. So then Kursk was under attack. In fact, the Kursk update I gave you yesterday, because I'm in a different time zone, that means Kyiv is many hours in front. That was actually happening as I was speaking to you. And now there is some footage, not a great deal of footage coming out. Kursk is under attack. That's the city itself in the oblast. Debris from missiles hit by Russian air defenses set houses on fire. Hot night for Russians in Kursk. Sorry, guys, Putin started a war, says Jürgen Nailed. So I don't know what was struck in Kursk. Again, a couple of days of not a lot of information about Ukrainian strikes in Kursk in particular. Ukraine destroyed a massive Russian weapons supply in Rostov. So Rostov is the oblast to the east of Berdyansk, Mariupol. Then you got Taganrog and Rostov-on-Don, so it's over that area there. A huge explosion was seen. An impressive photograph that has come out. There you go. So I don't know exactly what was struck there, but something very significant. As Roman Sheremeta says, what a beautiful photo from Rostov, Russia. A huge explosion is likely the result of a Ukrainian hit on a Russian airbase, is the claim there. I think Kursk airfield or air base was also struck yesterday or last night. Yet to hear news on that. I'll check in a second. Might be some more information coming out. Occupied Horlivka was also hit. It's been hit 2 days in a row. So that is a city to the east of, it's north of Donetsk, basically Donetsk city, and I guess east of Turets in New York kind of area there. So that was struck. That's been struck a couple of times. And then in Kursk, again here, missile attack on a paint shop in Russian Kursk yesterday, where the Akhmat Special Forces of the Ida Group were apparently based. So not really trying to destroy Russian paints, one would assume. So now onto other bits and pieces, because there isn't a great deal of news on those strikes. Mainly going to be talking about Kursk, I have to be honest. So Tendar says more and more footage entirely from Russian drones is proving that Ukrainian troops are visually confirmed quite deep in Russian territory. The largest extent I could find so far is the village, and his map there reflects that, is the village of Sheptukovka, almost 25 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. I think that the Russian claims of AFU being up to 35 kilometers inside Russia are relatively correct. The Ukrainian thrust into Russian territory is so substantial that the Ukrainian artillery has to be deployed inside Russia in order to stay in firing range of the front line. The situation in this sector shows that the Russians were likely trying to achieve in Kharkiv region. They wanted to have tubed artillery in range of Kharkiv city, but they ended up being bogged down in Vovchansk. So slight comparison between, or interesting comparison between what the Russians achieved or didn't achieve in Kharkiv and what the Ukrainians have achieved into Kursk. Now, there are different claims coming out, and I'm not sure what to make of this. So the Guardian has an article, quote, Shashank Joshi quotes it. The Ukrainian officials, so they've got an Ukrainian official as a source, explained there had been little effect from the Kursk incursion so far on fighting in the east. Quote, the situation is basically unchanged. Their pressure in the east continues. They are not pulling back troops from the area. Asked whether capturing the Kursk nuclear power plant near the border was an aim, the official said, we will see how the Kursk operation will develop. We absolutely will not cause problems for nuclear security. This we can guarantee. The official said he expected Russia would in the end manage to stop Ukrainian forces in Kursk and retaliate with a huge, large-scale missile attack that would focus on decision-making centers in Ukraine. So that was we don't know who it is, but some official making a claim that it's not affected the East. But then when we go to Russian sources themselves, Dmitry from War Translated says Russian military correspondent Kotenok, describing the situation in Donetsk direction, said that many forces were transferred to Kursk, which eased the pressure on the Ukrainians. So this is directly contradicting what the Ukrainian official said. So there could be an element of psyops from the Ukrainian. It could be that the person doesn't actually know the details. It could be that the Russian is here, who knows? But there are definitely contradictory claims coming out about whether the Ukrainians are able or are successfully drawing away Russian troops from the east. The Ukrainians, this is a quote from the Russian, the Ukrainians do not have any serious defense in this direction and are forced to constantly roll back. So that's kind of Pokrovsk, Donetsk area. Ours are trying not to lose the initiative and move forward, but a significant part of the forces have been transferred, where. So that is very significant. And here we have this source, Neil, saying Russian blogger, philologist, admits on Telegram that the army of Russia is cracking on all sides, that Ukraine is operating more intelligently and is better equipped. The troops are now being withdrawn from the Donbass to help in Kursk, and that had already suffered from wear and tear there. So they are being withdrawn from the Donbass to help in Kursk, and these were troops who were already suffering from losses. So according to him, retaking anything lost in Kursk will not happen in the short term. Quote, having achieved a breakthrough into the territory of Kursk region, the enemy naturally extended the front line. This requires appropriate forces. The enemy gathered such forces and struck. He struck very successfully. Ukraine has enough strength to succeed and consolidate. Any exhaustion of the enemy's potential in the direction has not yet been observed. On our side, reserves continue to arrive in Kursk. At the same time, the Russian forces remain insufficient, even for the stabilization of the situation, not to mention a defeat of the Ukrainians. This is not only quantitative, but also qualitative. The enemy is reasonably well-equipped units and formations. In our fire brigade, we still only have a hodgepodge of patchwork quilts, and that in meager numbers. I do not want to judge the units and formations of our strategic reserve, but as the events of the past few days have shown, we do not have the operational reserves at all. In order to stop the crisis, reserves are being transferred from other sectors of the front, not only from the nearest Kharkiv direction, but also from other directions, including those in which our troops have had some success in recent months. This further weakens our already thinning formations in these areas. These reserves or the reserves coming in from other areas are by definition short on personnel because of all the losses suffered. These losses are often enormous because of the poor organisation of our combat work and poorly supported attacks within the framework of a strategy that requires an offensive in all possible sectors. Moreover, that's the kind of deep battles doctrine I've been talking about, where they attack pretty much everywhere, find a weakness, and then pile into that weak area. Moreover, not all formations and units from other directions can simply be withdrawn because they are directly involved in offensive actions. As a result, against complete formations and units of the Ukrainians, we have largely imploding group BTGs, battalion tactical groups, as we had them in the summer of 2022 in Kharkiv Oblast, that is. We had here the enemy's advantage in terms of military technical means, including communication systems and drones, organizational structures, mainly in individual units and subunits of attack drones, and a flexible operational command system, which makes it possible to adequately respond to changes in the situation. So Ukraine can inflict fire damage on identified targets, and we get a harsh verdict on our high military leadership, including, first of all, General Gerasimov. This is a really damning indictment by a Russian source on the state of play for the Russians and how difficult it is for them to react appropriately and to pull on decent reserves. They just can't do it. Anton Gerashchenko's summary is, according to Russian telegram channels, panic reigns in the border areas of Russian Kursk region, where fighting has been going on all week. Russian media have introduced a new term, voluntary evacuation. There are no police, firefighters, medics, or representatives of the Russian administration. Russian settlements, according to official information, have been abandoned by more than 76,000 people. So actually, you can see there's video footage of lots of traffic, getting out, skedaddling from Kursk. Most people left on their own, as there was no organized evacuation, contrary to the Russian authorities' statements. Depopulation of villages because it became a catalyst for rampant Russian looting. So this is something we're hearing quite a bit about. There is Russian looting of Russian cities as they lose power, or towns and villages as they lose power and they get depopulated. Then it is the perfect time to go and loot, as according to someone who has a predilection for looting. Rampant Russian looting among the remaining population. Quote, stores are being looted. There is a collapse in Koronevo. Magnit has just been robbed. No water, no gas, no light. There was no organized evacuation. And if there was any, why haven't we in Lobanovka, that's in the Koronetsky district, heard anything about it? A local resident wrote. The situation is similar in other Russian border municipalities. Residents say that representatives of the administration have provoked a collapse in the border area themselves by leaving people to their fate. At present, the administration of Koronetsky district of Russian Kursk region cannot be reached. People are forced to self-organize in order to protect themselves and their property and perform the functions of state and law enforcement authorities. Residents of Kursk region who were affected will be paid 10,000 rubles each. Now, that sounds a lot, but that's only about $100. Apparently, Russia has some money only for contract soldiers and for war. Russia is gradually returning to the 1990s. In the video, says Gerashchenko, a Russian journalist shares about cases of looting in Lugov, Kursk region of Russia. So they're reporting on looting. It appears to be rife. It is not going well for the Russians. Now, Thomas Tyner summarizes the Kursk offensive as such. One, it embarrasses Putin and weakens his position. Two, forces Russia to move troops from the Donbass and southern Ukraine to Kursk and Bryansk, which weakens Russia's front line in the south. Three, forces Russia to send fighters and helicopters forward to compensate for Russia's lack of ground forces in Kursk, which gives Ukrainian anti-aircraft units ample opportunities to shoot down Russian aircraft. 4, Ukrainian troops continuously maneuvering, advancing while disrupting Russian communications through the use of electronic warfare. Forces Russian reinforcement convoys to loiter with Gimler's and ATACMS range, while Russian officers try to figure out where Ukrainian forces are, thus enabling Ukraine to strike the Russians and cause a mass casualty events. And we'll come to that because I've just seen something that's just come out. 5, provides Ukraine with territory and POWs to trade. 6, lifts the spirit of the Ukrainians and Ukraine supporters. 7, disheartens the Russians who support, or the morons, he says, who support Russia. There are no downsides to the Kursk offensive, he says. If Ukraine commits additional forces and matches Russian reinforcements, this offensive will continue for a long time. So that's a really positive outlook on that. Michael Clark, who's often on Sky News, he's a military expert, reacting to Martin Edwards saying, reports of brigades further south on the border behind the Free Georgian units that have crossed the border. Some are talking about an operation of 25 combat brigades to punch through the M2 to the M2 main road and cut off the city of Belgorod. If that happens, Putin will be humiliated. So there are these rumors that there are massive Ukrainian forces gathering in Belgorod or in Kharkiv to punch into Belgorod. Of course, the Russians have been coming down from Belgorod into 2 areas of Kharkiv. Now, I have no idea whether this is true. And it could well be massive psyops, which would, cause the Russians to panic and bring resources to there, away from other much needed places. So Michael Clark says, Martin, yes, I'm keeping an eye on the Belgorod aspect. I don't want to talk on air about it while it's still speculative, but if that turns out to be an objective, it really will change the stakes of the game. So there are lots of course, you've got to be careful. There's so many rumors floating about, but I just thought I'd throw that out there for you. Now, next is reporting that Ukrainian military has hacked into CCTV cameras in Russia's Kursk region, allowing them to control the movement of Russian troops and also target them with pinpoint strikes. So it doesn't control the Russian troops, but it monitors where they are, and then they can strike Russian troops. So that seems to be very clever if it is happening. Now, Russia's reaction to what's going on in Kursk is one of disinformation. We've heard them say an awful lot of stuff about repelling the Ukrainians that is not true. They're also apparently using massive automated bot account networks to hide news about the Kursk attack by flooding the, particularly Twitter. Some of these accounts post harmful links, others adult content. Russia really doesn't want this topic to be discussed on Twitter. Lots of people are reporting on this. There is lots of evidence that Twitter is being used by Russia to either disinform people about Kursk or hide what is really going on in Kursk from their own population. It's interesting, actually, just to pop in. I talked on my video about the US politics, how Elon Musk has just started a war with the UK. He's said all sorts of very damaging things against the UK in terms of freedom of speech, talking about how, because it was a Russian disinformation campaign that, or news piece, news in inverted commas, piece that prompted the riots up in Southport after the stabbings of those children, is completely false what was claimed, and then that's got our far right rioters and activists, up and down the country showing their displeasure, and he's then feeding that with consistent disinformation, so that from the left and right spectrum in mainstream media and in politics have been calling out Twitter and Elon Musk particularly for not helping at all. And he's still doing it. Like yesterday, the amount of memes and the amount of claims that he spread, and he's doing it today. Like every time I turn on Twitter, he is saying something that is really harmful to the situation in the UK. He needs to be called out. And he also has recently threatened to sue advertisers who weren't advertising with him, who went away when he became this free speech absolutist, took over Twitter and allowed all these white supremacists and far right back onto Twitter. And then advertisers said, look, we don't want to be associated with this. Our adverts being put next to people with really, really horrific views and opinions. And so advertisers fled Twitter, and now Elon Musk has threatened to sue them. And now more advertisers are fleeing Twitter after a recent Elon Musk lawsuit and riot comments. So both of those two things together have led more people to flee Twitter. So I wonder what's going to go on here. Elon Musk really has become like a massive conspiracy theorist and a right-wing shill, like a super right-wing shill, like a really problematic, a person of entirely problematic views, and he's spreading them to 190 million followers. This is not cool. But anyway, I thought I'd throw that one in there because there's disinformation being spread about the Kursk operation. Now, the last thing I'm going to say there's a few things concerning the Kursk operation that's just coming out now. So Z channels are now admitting that Ukraine soldiers are over 40 kilometers deep into Russia. The villages are not so important. Ukraine needs to take some high ground to be able to defend positions inside Russia, says Tim White. Claims that, they are 40 kilometers sort of northeast of where they started from, going through Sudzha into areas right up there. Rilsk is this area. There's that road on the way to Rilsk that had the column on it that was destroyed. You've got the E38 highway, seems to be a target for the Ukrainians. But yeah, lots of activity there. And indeed, so the one to read today, as every day with the Kursk operation, is Noel Reports, who has a daily thread on this. He says, if you was geolocated advancing towards village of Kruglenkova, so they're moving further forward, coming under Russian cluster munitions fire. The location and direction of the advance makes us believe we can adjust the map and put a certain part under Ukrainian control, which was considered a grey zone before. So these advances are still being made. Now, what I thought was important to note is, where is it? Just further down here. More places being claimed. Russian sources claim that on the border of the Belgorod region with Ukraine, the AFU is operating in small groups. This is a place where you'll be hearing rumors about larger troop accumulations, but clashes with small groups there. More prisoners being made, lots of footage of lots of dead bodies, as sadly is the case with war. And I'm just trying to find that one that I was aware of. So here we have something that goes against what was written or what was claimed by that Ukrainian official. Atesh, the partisan group, is monitoring the transfer of Russian military personnel from the 810th Marine Brigade to the Kursk region. An agent observed the movement of 10 Kamaz trucks with soldiers in the Donetsk region. They were later identified as heading to defend Kursk. Russia is reallocating forces from strategically important areas to cover gaps in the defense. The 810th Brigade was recently moved from Kherson to reinforce in Pokrovsk. So Pokrovsk needed reinforcement as they were losing so many troops, but also gaining ground. And that's where Russia have been really putting Ukraine under pressure. And now that 810th is being moved from Pokrovsk to Kursk, which is exactly what the Ukrainians, it appears, were intending. Baba Yaga drones being used, but there was something else. Where was it? Okay, I think it's here. So reports are coming in that the Russian 272nd Motorized Rifle Regiment relocated from Kharkiv area to near Kursk was reportedly heavily attacked by Ukrainian drones during its transfer. The attack would have resulted in several dozen fatalities, around 100 wounded, and the destruction of several T-80 tanks. The regiment was moving in a column when it was hit, so the possible further column being taken out, and also more troops being captured. There are so many videos of POWs, as mentioned earlier, 1,000 possibly captured, just more and more videos coming out, more captured servicemen, just so many on the socials. And we're going to go finally regarding Kursk. This is a bit tongue-in-cheek, a bit of a laugh. So this is the UK intelligence update. It's not, but it's a mock-up of it. UK intelligence update as to what is going on in the last few days. And so there you go. Ha 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 ha. So that is, I think, an appraisal. That joke itself is an appraisal of how well things are going for Ukrainians in Kursk. Of course, it's always how long will it last? What will they have to do when the Russians hit them with force? But the question is right now, can the Russians hit them with force? Do they really have enough resources? And if they do have enough resources, those resources are almost certainly going to come from the front line. I don't think there's any way around this. So while some people are saying, that it hasn't affected the front line, I don't think that it cannot not it's triple negative there, affect the front line. It has to affect the front line. The Russians, I just don't think, have any strength in depth, because even the idea of one of those sources I was just reading is that even in the Pokrovsk direction, they were having to draw from other areas of the front line to continue the momentum in Pokrovsk. They know that they're having success there. The Ukrainians are on the back foot, but the Russians have nothing themselves. So they're this is what I've been saying for the last few weeks. They're throwing everything in the kitchen sink into continuing that momentum while the weather is still good enough. And I think it could well be a very clever decision to go into Kursk that, as I said last night, is an area of land that you can easily take. There aren't the fortifications and minefields and the Russian defenders there, so you can just take huge swathes of land, and the Russians will have to therefore send inordinate amounts of equipment and resources and personnel to take that land back that's inside Russia. And those units are going to come from the front line. Right, anyway, thanks for watching. Really appreciate your support. Take care, guys. Speak soon. Toodle pips.